Well, thank you, Gemma, and good evening, everybody. Lovely to have the opportunity to really just set a context for the discussions later on. So I'm going to more pose questions and make wild sort of assertions for the other speakers to play with or disagree with or to build on, than try to give you the answer to anything. It struck me, looking at the title, Future Energy, that we could just sort of contrast it to what we might regard as past energy. So how has the energy sector sort of worked in the last 40 years, you could say 80 years, 120 years actually too? It's been probably a lot simpler and a lot more straightforward than we'd expect the future to be. And I'll give you a few sort of observations on what made it simpler and more straightforward. It was a world where government and regulators essentially made the decisions. It was a world where customers were pretty passive. They sort of did what they were told to do. So as an example of that, when we suddenly had lots of North Sea gas, everybody's home was converted in this country to burn North Sea gas. And we didn't think anything of it, apart from wait for the knock on the door one day for somebody to come and change the burners on our appliances. Lots of that. You could talk about, the introduction and soon to be withdrawal of diesel vehicles, probably in the same context. Our energy sector was organised at a national level with lots of national institutions, and big was sort of, I don't know about beautiful, but big was what it was. It was a world where we'd moved from burning fossil fuels in towns to bigger and bigger facilities for converting and producing energy. Energy was organised in nice silos, and what do I mean by those silos? I mean that transport and heat and electricity were sort of just managed in their own little worlds and didn't have to interact very much. Innovation happened slowly and in a broadly centrally managed way, and we pretty much put on our systems mature technologies. The energy system was owned and is still to a large degree owned by big, heavily capitalized, few companies that governments and regulators would easily know who they were and be able to interact with and talk to, take the views of, and influence. Our systems had enormous inherent storage because it was based on fossil fuels, which are a store of energy. So it didn't really matter whether and how customers consumed. You could just flex the production side to deal with it because of this enormous inherent storage. So that's perhaps a very simple and slightly silly characterization of the past of energy. That overall system, not just the engineering but the institutional architecture, dealt very well with a whole set of change. Thinking through my career, dealt with the coming and going, pretty much, of North Sea gas, the coming and going, perhaps, of diesel, the coming and going of large-scale burning of coal for electricity, maybe the coming and going of acid rain, some signs of the coming and going of nuclear, although, of course, we would observe that there's a lot of digging in Somerset at the moment. It didn't deal so far very well at all with climate change. And, a person far less generous than me would say it looks too small, too slow, not brave enough, not flexible enough, not innovative enough, and not strategic enough to deal with the difficulties of climate change. We had a big centralized sort of plan as an industry 10 years ago down to about 6 years ago. In this country, there was a straightforward, what I'm going to call Plan A, which I used to stand on stages and talk about, actually, and say that's how we were going to do it, so that's turned out to be wrong. Plan A was to take the electricity system, which provides about 20-25% of end use energy in this country, and interestingly, about 40% of the emissions, and decarbonize it big. Nuclear, CCS, big offshore wind farms, that was how we were going to do it, so it kept a degree of siloed between the different uses, but then having decarbonized electricity, drive that decarbonized electricity into essentially transport and space heating by the use of heat pumps and electric vehicles and so on. But the solution was big. And after 10 years of waiting for that to happen, we know it isn't going to happen. It's as clear as that. That is not going to be the way that we're going to tackle the trilemma in this country. We will, of course, need some of those big facilities to decarbonize electricity, but we are not going to have enough plentiful low-carbon electricity to straightforwardly, in the timescales we have, decarbonize transport and heat. So we have Plan B, which is broadly a lot of the exciting stuff that you're going to hear about tonight. Plan B is all about bringing an international, but particularly a local solution, a whole slew of very different local solutions that are going to come in and displace the national sort of approach to energy that we've had. The silos between electricity, gas, and oil, or between electricity, heating, and transport, if you like, they're going to become all broken and integrated together. We're going to get massive customer pull for things like electric vehicles and photovoltaics, where we're seeing dramatic changes to the economics of those things, as well as with storage. We're going to need very, very mixed and diverse solutions to heat in particular, and those things are going to have a local context. They're going to be about what sort of waste heat is there in the area. Can you use heat pumps? Can you use a hydrogen system? Can you use CHP? What other facilities are there in the area? It's going to be multi-vector, so these silos are going to be meshing all the time. We're going to get massive deployment of renewables, and we're going to have no inherent storage. So we're going to have to do something about that mismatch between production and consumption. And the speakers tonight will talk about that, because we will need to cushion and change that gap between production and consumption. It will be high innovation. It will continue to need innovation coming through all the time. It won't be straight to one new solution. We will continue to evolve with very high innovation right through to 2050 and beyond. It will need a very different structure, in particular to incorporate lots of new entrepreneurs, small companies, bringing forward all sorts of new products and services, which will be valuable to the UK and valuable overseas. It will obviously be very data rich, and the efficiency of the system will depend on our ability to use that data sensibly. And just as a final word, two things that are quite central to this institution, this academy. Engineers will need to be, more than they have in the past, something very different from just technologists. They're going to have to be very broad experts in social sciences, working with politicians, working with customers, certainly working with technology, working with all of those things as we see customer pull a lot more. And finally, whole system thinking will be at an absolute premium in this world as we see all this innovation come through and help us to to depart from a world which is just driven by government policy and interventions into a world which is really attractive for customers and gets us to our targets in that way. So they're my words of introduction. Thank you for the opportunity, Gemma, and I'll hand back to you.